First of all, I would like to give a shout out to the six people who are watching Annabelle in the row in front of me, because not only did they arrive about 45 minutes late to the movie, they are also some of the noisiest people I've ever encountered in a theater. And they kept saying things like David Blaine and Harry Potter over and over again, these loud, obnoxious voices. And when Alfred Woodard came out on screen, they started making racial slurs. I mean, I don't understand these people. Congratulations, you're the least evolved human beings I've ever encountered, and you are the reason this country will not progress in many years. So Annabelle is directed by John R. Leonetti, written by Gary Doberman, and stars, creepily enough, Annabelle Wallis, Ward Horton, Tony Amendola, and Alfred Woodard. So Annabelle takes place in the 60s and focuses on this couple, Mia and John, who are expecting a baby, but one night they are suddenly attacked by two devil worshippers, it seems. And they survive the attack, but one of the devil worshippers manages to kind of transfer her spirit to a creepy doll they have called Annabelle. This opens up a portal of sorts to allow the demon to come through and bad things start happening. So just in case you didn't know, and trust me, some people actually didn't know this, but Annabelle is a spin-off of The Conjuring, and I was actually kind of interested, and I was happy this movie was happening because this is what I wanted from The Conjuring. I wanted an expansion of this universe because I thought The Conjuring was so good. And while this does not go down the route that I wanted it to, another movie with the Warrens, it's still an interesting approach, I think. But ultimately, I think everything that made The Conjuring really good and scary, it's just not here. Annabelle is a movie that really tries to be like The Conjuring a lot, but lots of little things kind of add up, and it just really does not go anywhere near being like The Conjuring. For one, there's a bit more visual effects in here. While it's not a visual effects soaked movie, the fact that they have like a bit more of it kind of shatters the illusion of like the realism of it all, because CGI can work for some horror movies, but for a movie like this it's so grounded supposedly in reality, having CGI and stuff just kind of ruins the illusion. And one of the things I was really disappointed by in this movie was the fact that you don't feel like you're in the 60s, whereas The Conjuring, you really kind of felt the 70s vibe. Here, like, they make a couple of references here and there, but for the most part, you feel like this is like a modern horror movie, and that's really disappointing, I think. Like, they make some references to the Manson killings early on in this movie, but they really just feel tacked on because you don't feel the spirit of the era within the movie. This means that the production design, the costume design stuff, it's all kind of generic, and also the cinematography. I think it was a bit too bright and clean for this kind of movie. I mean, I hate to compare it to The Conjuring, but I will. Where in The Conjuring, the graininess of it all just kind of helped out with the atmosphere. Here, there is no atmosphere because it just feels so glamorized. I really think this movie had to be a bit weirder, like even in its cinematography, like with the angles and the how The Conjuring had weird like movements and stuff. Like I really, really think that would have helped here. And I really can't help but make the comparison because this is kind of like a prequel to The Conjuring. I'm not really sure why they wouldn't go with the things that worked a lot for The Conjuring. I don't know why they didn't just use them again here. The pacing also in this movie is just shot to hell. I mean, there are a few scary moments, but they're very few and far in between, and everything in between is really, really boring. So it really just feels like you're waiting for the next loud sound to happen. What's disappointing is that they never use the time in between the scary moments very well. They try to expand on the characters in the world, and it just does not work at all. It all begins to feel like a string of really disconnected scenes where characters just kind of pop in and pop out at random times, especially the husband, played by Ward Horton. I had no idea what he was doing half the movie. Like, he just literally disappears. He just leaves his wife at home, and, scary stuff happens to her. He comes back and he's like, oh, what's happening? And it's just, it's very, very repetitive, but boring at the same time. Another huge disappointment I had in the movie is that where is the cool sound now? Like, where's the scary ambient noises in the background, and where is the 60s music? I mean, The Conjuring had lots of 70s music. Here, I don't recall there being any 60s music. And in terms of the writing, the plot here, again, is very, very simple. Just like The Conjuring, again, it's very, standard horror movie, haunted doll possession plot, whatever. But the thing that's kind of infuriating here is that the characters now are, completely uninteresting and really, really stupid. In the last movie, there's kind of a reason why the family couldn't leave the house because they couldn't afford it. But here, your two central characters are pretty rich. I mean, you can tell they're well off. But there's I don't know why they don't just kind of leave the place or they don't seek for help earlier. Like a lot of this movie just spent them like just making excuses, especially the husband who's just like, oh, I won't call the cops because they're not in any mortal danger or anything. I'm just gonna go over to their house and oh look, devil worshippers. The script in this movie really repeats a lot of the same points we already heard from the last movie. Explaining that demons don't possess places, they possess people and stuff like that. And it's really disappointing because they had the opportunity to expand upon these themes, to build this universe, but they just end up repeating the same ideas. Prequels should not exist just to lead up to its predecessor. Prequels really should expand the world so that when you watch its predecessor, your mindset is kind of changed because you saw something that explains something that happens in the previous movie. And in terms of characters, I have a major problem with Alfred Woodard's character because I had no idea why she's there. She's literally there in the movie, so the movie can have a way to end. Without spoiling anything, that's literally the only reason why she's here. She pops up for random, convenient reasons, and she's here in the movie so the movie can reach a conclusion. In terms of acting, your two leads here, Annabelle Wallis and Ward Horton, they really don't have anything to work with, but they can't even pull off looking scared correctly, I think. Like, there's so many times in this movie where they're supposed to look, fearing for their life, and their facial expressions are no different from when they're just like talking in the apartment, having like a sort of heated argument, compared to them like running from a demon. They have the same facial expressions. To be fair, they do look like 60s TV stars or whatever. They have the whole old Hollywood look. Although, the chemistry they have with each other is also very old Hollywood in the sense that it just kind of feels like they're acting. Alfred Woodard, unfortunately, looks completely lost in this movie, like she has no idea what to do. I had no idea if her character was a good person or a bad person. She seemed so sketchy and suspicious all the time, and that's not the way the character was supposed to come off, I think. In general, no one really stands out in this movie and becomes memorable, which is also unfortunate because you could have used the priest to be memorable, you could have used the actual Satanists, you could have made them look memorable, but they don't look memorable. Ultimately, the director, John R. Leonetti, he really tries to be James Wan, but he's just not because he doesn't know how to build suspense. To be fair, there's one scene in this movie I think that was actually I think really cool and really creative. Something to do with an elevator. But for the most part, like the rest of this movie is just really really boring. Unfortunately, it's a movie that doesn't know what it wants to be. It's trying to make lots of references to The Conjuring, but at the same time, it's trying I think to be its own thing, and it really just can't decide. It really ends up forcing a message at the end. Like, after all this meaningless horror, suddenly it's supposed to be about family at the end, and it does not work at all. It's far too late for that to work. But like I mentioned, there are a couple of kind of creepy moments, especially like the elevator scene. There's a scene that's shown in one of the main trailers that's completely spoiled in the trailer, but it's a creative scare, I think. And overall, this was an attempt to expand upon the universe, although it didn't really work out in that regard. And this movie is loaded with jump scares too. I forgot to mention that. Lots of jump scares that are stupid and meaningless. So in the end, I'm gonna say Annabelle is a bad movie. Unfortunately, it's further proof that even if you kind of try to replicate what worked before, it really just comes down to good directing, good acting, good writing. That's your ticket to make a good movie. But despite this, I'm still hoping they have more, movies to build upon The Conjuring because I'm still holding out hope for like a sequel with the Warrens and stuff. But we will see. Anyway, that's my review of Annabelle. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.